afternoon and welcome to the Microsoft Saudi Arabia Sustainability Dialogues, where we're delighted to kick off a new podcast series. And today we're going to tackle leveraging green technology to accelerate sustainability in Saudi Arabia. That is the question we are looking to get into on this particular podcast. And I'm going to kick off with our host and welcome to the table, engineer Zainab Al-Amin, Vice President of Digital Transformation at Microsoft Arabia. Zainab, I'd encourage you to give us perhaps some of your opening thoughts in answer to this question of leveraging green technology to accelerate sustainability in Saudi Arabia. Of course, Saudi Arabia, like many other countries, has established a net zero target. So acceleration is really the name of the game. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's great to be here with you all. And acceleration, as you said, is the name of the game, according to the latest report by the Intergovernmental on Climate Change, that there has to be a rapid and a very quick, large-scale action in order to reduce the global warming and the acceleration of the CO2 emission and GHG emissions that are coming from human actions, etc. We believe that this action needs to be taken. Requires both technology and the scientific community to come together and come up with solutions to understand and respond to this change in the climate. In order for us to have not only an environment that we can live in, but we can strive on. So, and that's where technology enables this acceleration with all of the different solutions that it provides, and it can provide to reduce and first of all measure, record, and reduce all of these emissions.
Zainab, I might just follow up on that point, the acceleration point. Of course, you mentioned in your opening comments there the global sense, the sort of the demands, if you want, by the world community that we all tackle this together and with a sense of urgency. And of course, we also have Saudi Arabia itself going through a transformation. So we've got sort of essentially two transformations globally, both of them on an accelerated target. And I'm wondering, when we look at that point to achieve those two things, Saudi Arabia's accelerated transformation, the global transformation, and then the idea of our discussion, leveraging green technology. I'm wondering, from your point of view, do we need, what is more important, or how do you assess the two, leveraging existing technology to achieve these accelerated targets, or actually it requires the development of bespoke and new R&D, essentially? Where those two intersect on this question, do you think?
So it's actually both of those. So existing technology, for example, that is not emerging anymore, like cloud solutions, can reduce the carbon footprint. We did a study for if you compare utilizing an online or cloud-based solution versus an on-prem similar solution, that reduces carbon emissions, or compared to the carbon emissions by 98%. It's more carbon efficient, and not only that, but also 93% energy efficient. So that's a huge contribution to accelerate the reduction of those emissions. And this is existing. Yet at the same time, we need to look at innovative solutions to reduce our carbon footprint in Saudi Arabia and globally. And that's where the science and the technology need to come together in order to come up with new ways and new innovations. And this is where startups come in order to do just that.
Let's welcome one of our guest speakers today, Dr. Ahmed Al-Faddal, Chief Technologist at RPDC, which is the National Center for Technology Development and Commercialization in Saudi Arabia, and a subsidiary of the Public Investment Fund, which is known globally, of course, now, given all of its significant investments in very, both very dynamic new pioneering technologies as well as more traditional engagements. But nonetheless, even the Newcastle United has been the beneficiary of funding from public investment funds. So it's in all scores and all sizes. Dr. Ahmed, your opening thoughts on this idea of accelerating this transformation, accelerating sustainability in Saudi Arabia while leveraging green technology?
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to join you today. Thanks for the invitation. It's really my pleasure to participate in this panel. Well, since the movement toward decarbonization and sustainability has attracted attention in the kingdom, aligning with the 2030 vision and with full drive from the government, we've seen significant effort that's been allocated from all sectors within the supply chain. Maybe in the past year or two, things got slow because of COVID, but that plan has started before the COVID time, and now we see significant drive toward increasing the investment of R&D toward green technology, the technology adoption by the different industry sectors, uh, the support we get toward for startups and that are actually focusing on the sustainability sector. So again, also as you mentioned earlier, companies like Saudi Aramco, they had their 2050 plan to get to a net to achieve net greenhouse emission in their operation by the 2050. So I see that we are heading toward great accomplishments in the areas relevant to green technologies in 2022. In our business, supporting innovation and the commercialization of technologies, actually, we also see that movement where significant support has been allocated in R&D and also the kind of funding that we could utilize to bridge the gap between the low technology readiness level technologies and taking it all the way to mature technologies that could be deployed in the market. So great effort has been going on, and we are, as a commercialization entity, also recognizing those challenges and trying to support it. But also, I believe that education as the foundation and the building block to build the curiosity and innovative mindset among the youth is the major investment that needs actually to be taken as a long-term investment. And we see new programs and new initiatives by the government going toward that direction.
I mean,
So great things are happening.
that's ultimately the kind of the destination, isn't it? The inspiration, the idea that you can create a technology breakthrough that inspires young people in Saudi Arabia to follow in your footsteps. I wonder, Ahmed, if you might just give us a little bit more of a crystal sense of what you consider commercialization to be exactly. I know there can be different entities, different countries, different R&D houses can define that word commercialization a little bit different. I'm wondering, in your case, what does it mean and what would be a successful version of that?
Well, there are actually many definitions or many angles where we can attribute this term. But currently in our business, we realize that there is a huge gap between all the funding that's been steered for R&D in the kingdom and how we can take all those technologies from the lab all the way to the market. And that's what's called the valley of death, as known by many. So in actually that valley of death, technologies are stuck in the lab. They don't receive further investment. They don't receive the support to be advanced and making it ready to go all the way to the market. And that's actually when where entities like RPDC, where initiatives from the government, generous support is coming from the different entities and institutions to support advancing technologies in that sector. Universities, they have established their technology transfer program to support the advancement of technologies to making it more mature to go to be deployed. In RPDC, we have what's called the commercialization engine, and that's when we look at the business and the technical aspects of technologies. Of course, not all R&D projects could lead into a startup company, and many of them actually cannot go to the market. Less than 1% of the patented technologies actually have merit to go and be a deployed technology. So that's what we actually work on in RPDC, trying to look into the feasibility of those technologies, trying to build a business case. We try to get funding and support to advance technologies. We believe in co-innovation in RPDC, and that's when we try to take a specific technology from an R&D entity and we try to match it with other supporting entities. We develop technologies internally, try to address all the missing gaps and attributes for a specific technology, and that's when actually we go to the commercialization stage through programs like the Entrepreneur in Residence for entrepreneurship, or to present those technologies to the different industries within Saudi Arabia. It's a challenging road that we are taking, but we are getting significant support from the different government entities.
Well, nobody more capable to maybe take the next part of that conversation forward than our third guest, Dr. Morgan Eldred, chairman and founder of Digital Energy, a former senior futurologist with the Gartner technology consultancy known globally. And Morgan is specializing in the area of digital transformation for the oil and gas industry, which of course is one of the largest, probably the largest. Tourism is growing, isn't it? But ultimately, oil and gas industry still very, very dominant in the region. And obviously, Saudi Arabia's biggest company, actually the biggest company in the world now, Saudi Aramco, publicly traded. Morgan, welcome your thoughts on the theme of our conversation today.
Oh wow, it's great, and it's an exciting time to talk about this because there is transformation, as you mentioned earlier, Sean. There's a massive transformation already going on within Saudi. I kind of look at it as like, I think it's almost like if we look at Saudi, obviously oil, gas at the moment, it's the prices are right. You could say the world needs it, but I think if you look at water, Saudi Arabia is actually, water is really where I think the interest is, right? Like you think about it, you need so much water that's there. When we talk about, let's say, green tech, a lot of people think about digital technology. They think about sensors and things like that. But, if you start looking at things like, carbon sequestration, how you're doing that, and let's say, pumping, carbon into abandoned, let's say, oil wells. What about if you do that with water? So what about all the water that's being used? How can that be cycled, rather than what happens at the moment is a lot of water is being used for, oil and gas produces a lot of water, and then they just typically pump it back into the system for secondary recovery. And I think Saudi Arabia is one of the unique countries in the world to actually lead with a technology in that space, because it hits where they've got the infrastructure, they've got the data, they've got the asset. And I could see, historically, or the way the country's going is, I could see Saudi not just doing innovation internally, but scaling technology outside of not just within the region, but globally, in areas where there is unique skill sets, or there is areas where, we'll think aqua power came from out of Saudi Arabia as well. So I think these are kind of the areas where there's massive potential in Saudi.
Recently, Morgan, we saw the Saudi Arabia's pavilion at the Expo 2020 in Dubai got voted the best pavilion at the Expo, and that was led and created by Saudi Aramco, and given the sort of unique abilities and long legacy of achievement at Saudi Aramco for innovation and the deployment of R&D and the commercialization of new technologies, what can we learn from them? What can we learn within the context of accelerating transformation, leveraging green technologies in the kingdom? What can we learn from Saudi Aramco, do you think, and as a case study, as a leader globally, but also obviously a leader in Saudi Arabia that can help with this acceleration?
So it's interesting you say that. Actually, I was at Expo 2010 in Shanghai, and Saudi Arabia had again. Then it was a big oil tanker with date trees on it. If you've seen the expo they had there, but when we're talking, well, it's 12 years now, but because obviously COVID delayed Expo 2020. But even 10 years ago, Saudi Arabia had pretty much the best, let's say, exhibition stand. And I think what Saudi can do and what we can learn from Saudi Arabia is doing things at scale. So you look at Saudi Aramco. It started out, it got privatized, right? Kind of governmentalized as well, probably first, and then privatized. Then you look at SABIC, where they've taken assets from Dow Chemicals and they've moved. I think we could learn from Saudi is a different way of doing business. And what I mean by that is it's this big holding company that can acquire assets, bring them in and build big industry at scale. I think that for me is where I think it comes. And then of course, research, development, training people, how can you get those the future futurists, because you need them. And if you talk about things like green tech, at the moment it's very hard to get in anywhere in industry to get real environmentalists, right? They're only now coming out within school. So, in university, if you want them, they're not historically been in industry. And I think at scale, we can learn the Saudi business model. I think that's the thing that is more interesting, or is where other parts of the world can learn.
Zainab, the thought of Saudi Aramco and its achievements on so many levels, and obviously of scale, you might say one of their greatest skills is the ability to project manage towards success. But also the idea of fostering innovative culture, which of course all big corporations are challenged by. You're with Microsoft, the most amazing innovative culture perhaps in the world when it comes to companies of that size and age. I'm wondering, from your point of view, how can we foster a stronger innovative culture in Saudi Arabia that accelerates this ambition of green technology adoption?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because Sean, it's really Saudi Arabia now is beginning to really at the peak of its transformation and growth, and that is evident not only through Aramco but also through all of these announcements. For example, NEOM, the most urban complex, the most urban complex in the world that uses sustainable urban complex in the world. So it's using completely renewable energy, and it's built with that vision, and that requires a lot of innovation. So having the investment, the fund, and the regulations to support this, and policymakers, plus also academia and the school and the entrepreneurship ecosystem as well. Yesterday, I was at the GEC, the Global Entrepreneurship Conference, and they have announced funding about 1.6 million Saudi riyals, which is equivalent to 1.7 million US dollars, in injecting that into the billion into the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Saudi Arabia. So to have the entrepreneurship, the talent, and the government support and will, and these mega projects that are really serve like a launch pad for all of these innovations, are all, and then having the international companies like Microsoft with our accelerators and Microsoft for Startups program that can support those startups in finding innovative ways. All of those are elements of success for any innovation, like being a catalyst and an incubator of innovation that can be implemented in Saudi Arabia and replicated to the rest of the world.
Dr. Ahmed, it's so important, obviously, to not only nurture and develop talent in the kingdom in order to achieve these goals, but also to retain talent like yourself, a chief technologist, You did your postdoctoral research at Rochester University in New York. In another age, perhaps you would have stayed there, but now you can be ultimately at the cutting edge of many of the world's new technologies, the fourth industrial revolution and all of its toolbox, right in your home country. How important is that, these kind of cutting edge opportunities? I mean, at the end of the day, Elon Musk started Tesla with a $500 million grant from his own government in the United States. The same sort of model in the kingdom, the opportunity for that in order to retain and develop talent like yourself in the kingdom and achieve these goals of acceleration.
Well, yeah, thank you for bringing up that point. Actually, I really believe that they say that it takes a village to raise a child, but it's literally takes a country to raise a startup or to raise an innovative technology being deployed. So one of the main aspects actually is the development of the skilled human capital. Many elements are required to achieve the desired skilled human capital development that ranges from quality of education, the direct investment toward R&D, technology development, and also the support from the industry, among others. So currently there are many universities, R&D institutions in Saudi Arabia. They are generating talented individuals. And they do have like the basic skills required for like green technologies and sustainabilities among other sectors.
And quite often the past would have been stuck, using the word basic. I just wanted to jump on it for the point of making the point. We've spent a lot of our previous generation stuck in basic research and struggling to get to applied and deployment and commercialization. That's a huge new step and a great opportunity.
Exactly. So that's why we really think that this is not sufficient without really creating high-tech jobs, creating opportunities that are actually aligned with the demand in the current projects and initiatives we have in the country that also align with the vision of the kingdom. So we don't have that level of opportunities yet in the kingdom, but the new initiatives, the ambitious plans that we see at NEOM, Aramco, SABIC, leveraging autonomy, robotics, and AI in the smart cities of NEOM, the new advancements, adoption of cutting-edge technologies by Aramco and many other companies, all that actually make it very promising to see that there's a new path for how we look at things from the education perspective, from the research perspective, and also how we are going on and supporting those initiatives. So from the entrepreneurial mindset, actually, this has been also very challenging because many of the catalysts or those who are trying to support the adoption of those technologies, they're trying to copy paste the Silicon Valley model, for example. I really think that each region has its own unique situation and unique opportunities. Realizing the challenges, steering all the effort needed to address those challenges from all levels and by the stakeholders in the ecosystem, training people, sending them to actually get the right education abroad, building the right programs internally, and having them participate in those initiatives will help us actually get the right talent who could be the next Elon Musk and generate the new companies that could actually take the country to a different new paradigm.
Morgan, one of the challenges in fostering a stronger innovative culture ultimately is like any playground with any children, isn't it? Sharing the idea that, quite often in the development of new technology, this is my IP, this is my invention. I am, and ultimately, as just mentioned there, Ahmed, the idea that Silicon Valley really reinforces that my culture, but ultimately the idea of sharing and being more open and collaboration in the context of where Saudi Arabia is going towards its 2030 vision, very, very important. What's your advice? What would your sort of guidance be on that if you were still wearing your Gartner hat, for example, and also in your own, obviously, at Digital Energy, that idea of collaboration rather than hoarding?
Yeah, well, I think, yeah. So, I mean, IP is as good as it's written. And what I mean by that is anybody can write IP, anybody can file patents, and there's so many different ways to protect what you do that you can still always do something almost, the same, right? Without infringing. So I don't necessarily believe in the concept of patents. And I believe even Elon Musk himself has said that, he's released all of the core IP that they have is kind of released to the world. But then obviously it's about the application of the technology, and that's where you need where you're saying you need to play well with others, which means you need to share. You need the technology. It needs to be purpose driven, and the purpose needs to come from an organization, from business. And I think that's where to grow an innovative ecosystem, you need to have the ability for large companies to work with startups, to apply technology there. And it should not be about owning the technology. It should be about applying the technology and having common mutual benefits for all parties, right? There's no point having a technology that then stuck, or as Ahmed had mentioned earlier, the value of debt, right? It goes in there and then it never goes. So the key there is to play well with startups, to play well with scale ups, to play well with the big large organizations and the government. So it is like a play box, you could say. But then in the play box, you need to not just have it open, you need to also give it time, right? So you can't necessarily at the same time just be driven by where's my reward now. You have to develop through failure.
Well, I came across a position recently in a project I was working on, and one of the participants his job title was Chief Failure Officer, which was quite interesting on that point of learning from failure. Zainab, in this point, the idea of the partnership, strategic collaboration, ultimately Microsoft, of course, is the sort of most well placed in so many different ways, given you're in every sector, you are across so many different stakeholder groups. How does that role, if you like, that idea of strategic collaboration differ in the digital age? What makes it more applicable?
Actually, it's as you mentioned, Microsoft is a huge company. It's probably the largest tech company in the world, and has a lot of muscles and a lot of knowledge that it can offer to startups and to the different economies. We had a study in 2008 with IDC that for every real that Microsoft makes, 11.5 goes to the ecosystem. So this is along with the growth mindset, and the way that Microsoft operates is through its partner ecosystem and its partner network. So it is of interest to Microsoft to grow the economy around digitalization, and this becomes a win-win, and also it's a win for the local country and for the local startups to be part of that ecosystem and to innovate and to have the latest cutting-edge technology, and not only using them but building on top of them, building their own IPs. And as Morgan said, its IPs is as good as they're written. So if you have startups building IPs in Saudi Arabia, they will answer to some of the challenges that we are having here today locally, and that can be really exported outside. And this is the beauty of working with one of the largest tech companies, and with the talent that Dr. Ahmed mentioned earlier, that this is an area of the talent is a gap globally, not only in Saudi, but it's also an area of opportunity and to invest in and to grow and to skill and reskill.
Dr. Akbar, just sort of getting to closing comments now, I wanted to get your particular insights and expertise around sensing technologies and that what role they could play in this acceleration to sustainability and leveraging green technologies in the context of the kingdom. They could revolutionize the internet, the application of the Internet of Things. Tell us a little bit about that and what your vision might be within the kingdom for that.
Well, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Actually, this is one of the key areas that we've seen significant support from the R&D perspective. I mean, I graduated from Cal, where I did my PhD, and the programs, actually the R&D programs in that direction, the shift from the mindset from like doing traditional computational semiconductor-like devices into how we can actually develop innovative sensors, new materials for sensing applications, new algorithms that we're focusing on AI and big data to support and complement the developed sensors. So the different research directions that are actually going along and in parallel with the sensing development, which actually has been a movement around the world in most of the universities. Actually, I see them to be like key enablers for most of the new devices and technologies that are going to be introduced and developed and deployed. And I mean, when we think about sometimes the complications for manufacturing, like those devices, if we want to think about the commercialization perspective. Now, like with all the digitization and all this fascination and how people can easily connect to each other and share information and utilize, like, I mean, we've heard in the past people, they have like the cloud kitchen when someone can order from somewhere and then get their food cooked somewhere else. Now we have a similar term for, like the semiconductor industry. In the past, if you don't have multi-billion dollars trying to build your own foundries, your own facility to manufacture those semiconductor devices, you have no business. Now we see many growing startup companies that are actually million-dollar companies, multi-million-dollar companies, who are fabless startup companies. So they do have the process, they do have the technology, but they have the agreement or the partnership with other entities and other companies that have these capabilities, whether in the same country or somewhere else. And they are able actually to introduce their innovative devices, and they are able to take it all the way to the market. I see that Saudi Arabia, with leveraging such a concept, will have great opportunity actually to benefit from the R&D activities going on in the sensing and the devices domain. But with these partnerships around the world, actually, we could introduce new array of technologies that could serve the sustainability sector and the green technology.
Morgan, in terms of your closing comments, I'd also welcome your thoughts and deployment of industrial AI in Saudi around the idea of environomics.
Okay, well, geez, that's only a closing statement.
Yeah. Well, just to give us a sense of tangible pathways forward to achieve this acceleration, this is certainly one tool to do that.
Oh, it absolutely is, right? So environomics is literally the unification of your economic strategy with your sustainability practices, right? So a very thing example is if I want to optimize my project schedule, if I want to optimize my delivery, how do I do that for financial reward, but also to make it as sustainable as possible and getting that balance right. So obviously for that, you need sensors technologies that you said, because we need to be able to track. So we need to track where your emissions are, air emissions, carbon emissions, organic emissions, right? So the whole factor of emissions, where waste is, whether it's water, materials. So you need to track it. Then you need to trace it, where you can do some performance management and benchmarking and really start to use it. And then the AI part comes in, which is then you can optimize it, right? And this can be applied in anything that you do at scale. So wherever there is waste, wherever there is emissions, it can be applied. I mean, it really is almost as simple as like, it is accounting, right? It's like just a new form of accounting with AI and optimizing it. But the approach is obviously very novel, because a lot of people are not thinking about that. I think Saudi is a great place to adopt it, and we're working on doing that. And it's because there's so much activity. It's in the region. It is the biggest country in the region. It is hugely industrial with the Saudi Aramcos, the SABICs, of the world. But I think one of the things that what we do find is people need to understand what environomics is. It's more than just ESG, right? It is that it's not just the tracking, it is the tracing where you make it a difference in your business. And then it is through the AI optimizing it.
Well, listen, we have to wrap up. It's been an amazing conversation. I'm going to give the last word and closing comment to our host, engineer Zainab Al-Amin, to close us out.
Well, thank you all for being part of this amazing podcast. This is our first podcast with another series to come, and it's great having you all here. we're focusing on discussing sustainability around the different themes, and green technology is one of them. Circular economy is the second, and then energy, and the other ones are as well circular economy. So it is really great to have you all, and thank you for really being part of this.
Well, that wraps up our first edition of the Saudi Arabia Sustainability Dialogues podcast. And we'd like to thank our guest speakers today. Really wonderful. Obviously, our host, Zainab Al-Amin, but also Dr. Ahmed Al-Fadl, the Chief Technologist at RPDC, and of course, Morgan Eldred, Chairman of Digital Energy. Thank you guys so much for being part of it, and I hope you'll be back and join us later on in the series. All the best.
Thank you.